one of the beautiful things about like all of this is the community and getting to know other sailors who might be doing this.
Yeah.
And meeting people and establishing connections and friendships and relationships with people. The opportunity to learn and connect with others is tremendous.
Welcome to the Passages from the Heart podcast, a podcast featuring real people sharing real stories about adventure out on the water. I'm your host, Shell Hart. Imagine setting out to learn to sail, and then less than 2 years later, you're gearing up to sail solo in the Florida 120 aboard a 14-foot open boat. That's exactly what Darren, aka Skipper D of Skipper D Adventures, has set out to do. In this episode, we travel back in time to September 2024, when Skipper D embarks upon a course of study with the American Sailing Association, and he shares how he discovered an amazing and supportive sailing community. With 261 hours of sail time, a total of 835 nautical miles sailed, with 436 of those being coastal and ocean nautical miles, with 5 American Sailing Association certifications, as well as an ASA docking endorsement, Skipper D has built up a substantial sailing resume in less than 2 years' time after setting out to learn to sail. Skipper D has enjoyed sailing on both larger and smaller vessels, and when it came time to find his match for sharing adventures out on the water, he surprised himself by deciding to purchase a 14-foot Com-Pac picnic catboat. The Com-Pac picnic catboat is gaff-rigged, and though perhaps small, the boat is built with big adventures in mind. Skipper D has been documenting his journey with his incredible YouTube channel called Skipper D Adventures. Be sure to check it out, as well as his website, www.skipperd.com. And now, on to the show. Ahoy, Skipper D. Are you there?
Hey, Shell, yes, I'm here.
Yay! Hey, welcome to the Passages from the Heart podcast. I'm so super stoked that you are here. I just had this one on my wish list for a while.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah. Well, so I think we first connected just to let our listeners know. You reached out to me because I had listed my Com-Pac Legacy for sale, my older one, the 2008 model, and I think we got to talking, and I think I'm not sure if it was you or me because we were both boat shopping, I think at the time. And I think I was sharing some ads with you and maybe you shared some with me, and then I think we sort of developed a rapport from that point forward. And then I'd be curious, since we did start or met because of the Com-Pac Legacy, before we even get into how you found Bluebell, your Com-Pac picnic cat, I wanted to sort of start with a question that I normally ask my guests about their background in sailing. So if you would be so willing to indulge us, can you share your background story with sailing and how you came to be a sailor?
Alrighty. So yeah, talking about my background in sailing, I was looking for a way to get back into boating. I'll talk more about my other boating experience in a moment. But I was not boating and I did not have a boat and I wanted to get back on the water, and I was trying to find something that would satisfy 3 criteria. So one was a progressive, disciplined way to grow my skills and experience, something that was affordable, and something that had a sense of community where I could draw upon others' expertise and knowledge and have some camaraderie with others. And so as I was looking around trying to find ways to do that, sailing was the best way to do that with the things that were on offer, I guess you could say. I'm based near Atlanta, Georgia, and so we have 2 lakes nearby, Lake Lanier and Lake Allatoona. And at Lake Lanier, they have, well, each lake has their own sailing clubs and sailing academies and that kind of thing. So I discovered Lanier Sailing Academy, and that's where I decided to take my first sailing lessons. So it was ASA 101. And then they have a sailing club too called Passport Sailing Club. And by joining the club, I would then have access to all of their fleet of boats that I could sail and that community feel that I was looking for with others that would might be in my same experience range and beyond, so that I could draw upon other people's expertise. I could crew on their boats. They could, or on when I went sailing, they could crew with me. I could crew with them. That kind of thing. So I signed up to do ASA 101. That was in September of 2024 is when I took the class. I signed up for it like 6 months prior. I was really super excited, waiting all that time. Couldn't wait to get started. And the way I approached it was I thought, well, let me try ASA 101. If I enjoy it, I will then sign up for the next class after that. And I was thinking I was thinking initially I wanted to do ASA 101 and beyond that, perhaps ASA 103, and even maybe as far as ASA 104. But I thought, let me get the first one done under my belt first, and then see how I feel about it. And if I love it, I'll move forward. And if not, I can just stop, where I was. That's what got me started sailing.
Okay, so just by looking at your, I guess I would call it your sailing resume almost, I would say, on your website, which is really nice, by the way, and I'll include a link to that for listeners to check that out. It did look to me like you did beyond just the 101 and 103, and I actually did both of those courses too. And can you tell me, so like, for example, the 104 course, which from what I remember allows, well, if you pass it, it provides, ASA provides you with, I think it's you get certification from the others too, but this one specifically, I think is for bareboat chartering, so that you have some documentation to present to charter companies so that you can prove your competence, right? With if you wanted to, like, let's say, go to the BVIs and charter I don't know, a 36-foot Beneteau or something.
Right.
You have that credential, right? Don't you have that?
I do, correct.
Okay, so did you do, usually it's bundled, I think, with 103, right? 103 and 104, aren't they kind of usually coming together as a bundle that you can do? Or is that how you did it?
That is not how I did it. They can be bundled. I've even seen where 101, 103, and 104 are bundled together. And I know
Yep.
people who have done it that way. I did them all separately. So I did my 101, and my sailing club suggested the head of the club. His name is Matt. Excellent, great guy. He said, or I guess their policy was do 101, then get 20 hours. I think it was. I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was roughly 20 hours or 20 outings. In any case, get some experience sailing after your 101. When you reach that threshold or you get bored with taking out the small boats, at that point you would be ready to do 103. So they really
Right.
encouraged do the 101, get some experience, then go into 103. They really advised against doing 103 like right after 101 because you're not going to get or their philosophy was you're not going to get as much out of the class because you
Yeah.
haven't really exercised what you learned in 101.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. Yep.
so between 101 and 103, I had 6 months worth of sailing between the two. So by the time I did my 103, I was like really itching to do 103 because by completing 103, I was eligible to reserve and rent out the other boats in the club. So, in other
Yeah.
words, with 101 certification with this particular sailing club, you can take out the small boats, which are 22 footers and 25 footers. Once you complete 103, you now can take out all the rest of the boats in the fleet, which are 27, 28, 29, and 32 footers.
Oh my, wow.
So, and those are all diesels with diesel engines. So it's like
Yep.
101 grads can do the small boats with gasoline engines, and 103 grads can do the bigger boats, like all the boats and all the diesel boats. So
Wow.
I really wanted to get access to those other boats and to learn how to operate the diesel engine and so forth. So I was very eager to do the 103.
Right, right. Wow, that sounds great. So for you, when you decided to go pursue the 104, did you have ambitions to want to charter some like boats down in Florida or in the Caribbean? What was sort of the motivation behind pursuing the next step with the ASA training?
Really, it was to just expand my skills and knowledge. It wasn't so much, I wasn't that interested in chartering per se, but I just wanted to have that next level of training. And I was actually going to continue doing it with Lanier Sailing Academy because they'd done the first two certifications that I did, and they were excellent. It was excellent training, and I was going to do 104 with them, but they had had a program where they had a partnership with a boat owner in Brunswick, Georgia. So you could do your 104 and get some coastal training. So you'd be on the coast on a larger boat, and you'd get experience with tides and channel markers and the ICW and all that kind of thing. But just before I went to sign up for my 104, as I was graduating my 103, they ended that program. So they ended that partnership, and they didn't have that boat and that experience available anymore. So you could still do 104 through that sailing club and that academy, but it was going to be on Lake Lanier. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do 104, I really want to have the experience of being on a larger boat out on the coast, with all that kind of coastal experience. So I looked around and I found another sailing school called Myrtle Beach Sailing School, and that is run by a gentleman named Jason Cox. And so I signed up for a multi-day passage. So it was getting 104 training on board a 45-foot boat that did a passage from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, to Hilton Head, South Carolina, and back. So it was a round trip, 320 nautical mile, 6-day cruise, so to speak, where you're getting on the job training, so to speak, uh, getting training doing a real offshore passage. And I thought, wow, that's the way I want to do this. So I signed up for that and drove from Atlanta to Myrtle Beach and did my 104 training that way.
That sounds like that would have been absolutely stellar. I think, yeah, that would have been the way to, go about it, I would say. Or the other thing I thought about doing is they have a lot of the Caribbean, I don't know, charter schools and whatnot that offer similar sorts of packages with that.
Right.
And I would love to do that, but it's not so much getting the time, it's more so finding care and coverage for the
Right.
farm while we are away. And I think also for me, you know, I'm going to become a trailer sailor this year, which I've never done.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so that's going to be a bit of a learning curve for me. Whereas the last since 2021, I guess I've been sailing on or out of a slip, where we would keep our boat, which I don't know. That has its own sets of challenges too, I guess, but trailer sailing is going to be a different experience. And so I'm curious, after you had that, I want to say, I think you said just to kind of close up the ASA stuff, I think you did have, was it one last course that you took? Was that 105?
Yeah, I went on to do actually three more after that. So I did 105, which was coastal navigation, which is not on the water. That's not on the water training. That's not even, you don't even get on a boat for that training. It's all about charts and navigation and a lot of math and some
Will that
geometry, learning how to
would
read
that
charts
not
and
be?
like find your way. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just was curious. Is that sort of the next? Because 103 is coastal cruising, and you do touch upon all of that, but you don't get into the nitty gritty like it sounds like with your what you're talking about. You really get into the nitty gritty with it, right?
Yeah, so that is touched upon in the other classes. So yes, in 103 and 104 particularly, you do get exposure to charts, reading charts, and so sort of the basics. Very, very, very basic. But 105, like you dive very deep into all of that. So you learn all about dead reckoning and finding your way and figuring out how to deal with currents and tides and winds that push you off course. And once you get off course, how do you find your way back onto course and all that kind of thing. And it required a lot of homework. So before I even stepped foot in the classroom, it was required that we do about, I don't know, it was like a 6 to 8 week workbook, and doing all the stuff on the chart ahead of time, so that by the time you got to the classroom, you pretty much knew everything you were going to be exposed to. But anyway, so
Yeah.
that was very valuable, and I loved it because it was very theoretical, and I'm sort of, I'm inclined that way. I'm a computer programmer by trade, um, so I liked all the sort of the logical, all the logic part of my brain that is involved in doing
Yeah.
this stuff. So I did
Yeah.
that. I, and I did the 105, and then I did 118, which is a docking endorsement. So it was just, all about how to dock a 32-foot boat, essentially, a large-ish diesel boat. Um, and then I circled back to ASA 102, which is a class that ASA introduced sort of after the fact. And it's that one covers like advanced sail trim and that kind of thing. So if you're like into racing, or you just really want to know the finer points of how to adjust your sails for greater efficiency and performance, that's what ASA 102 is all about. So I completed that as well.
Let's I think I want to say you did do some racing. I thought you mentioned you did some crewing with racing. Can you kind of tell the listeners a little bit about some of the racing that you did?
Gotcha. Okay, so I hate to disappoint you, but it's actually very minimal. I've participated in two races. They were races sponsored by the club. The first time I was just crew, and well, I shouldn't say just crew because any racing experience is actually very good experience, no matter what your role is. But I was on a large boat, so it was a 32-foot boat, Catalina 320. So the sailing club has four of those, and so what they did is just gathered up whoever wanted to participate on that day. They'd scheduled a day for the race, and all the club members, you can sign up for participating in the race. So I went and got randomly assigned to a boat, and there were seven of us on that boat that day. And it was in the wintertime, which was kind of interesting. It was like a polar bear race or whatever they called it. And
Oh my. Wow.
and so you had to kind of bundle up and get your foul weather gear on and that kind of thing. So I was just, I was on the boat, and I had a chance to be at the helm for a little bit, and of course work lines and all that. And what we did is on the lake that we're on, Lake Lanier, there's a very large island in the middle of the lake called Three Sisters Island. And so what we did is we sailed up the lake and then around the island and all the way around it, and then back to the marina. So that was one type of race. So we were racing these cruisers essentially. So that was one race that I participated in, and the other was completely different. It was racing the Catalina 22s, which are, I guess, what more people might think of as like your typical kind of racing situation. So the club's got a whole bunch of those littler boats, and so
Is that like
we
the Capri 20, Catalina Capri 22? Is that what those are?
correct, yes. So
Okay.
yeah, so it was a Capri 22, and we had three. I think it was three initially, three people, but we added a fourth on that boat, and that's more a little bit more like where there's I don't know, there was a starting line and you had to go around certain buoys in a certain order and then come back and do, you had like four or five boats all competing against each other, and then when all the boats come in, they've got the race coordinators are tallying up all the results, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and again. So we did like, I don't know, four or five races in the afternoon, and that was kind of more intense, really, because you're on a smaller boat, you have to pay a lot more attention. Uh, you're closer to the water. Um, Really small adjustments make a big difference. So that sail trim that I was talking about earlier, I hadn't taken 102 yet, so I didn't really understand all that. I was just listening and watching to see what the skipper was saying, and kind of just following directions, and observing. So I didn't quite understand the theory behind what we were doing. I just knew that to pull a line in a little bit more or let it out or what have you.
Yeah.
Um, and then later I learned more of the theory behind what we were doing. But yeah, that was essentially my racing experience. I'm not really a big racer. There are a lot of races that happen on the lake, both with our club and other clubs on the lake. There are lots of races, but I've only had the chance to participate in those two.
Let's sort of dive into how your boat shopping experience evolved and how you decided upon the boat that you have, because I think, that can be a pretty daunting process to go through. But I would love it if you could sort of walk us through when you decided it was, you're ready to buy a boat, like how you sort of came to that decision, and then how you sort of explored your options to lead you to make a decision about the boat that you decided to purchase.
Gotcha. This is such a big topic, and you mentioned transitioning to become a trailer sailor, and I have just recently gone through that experience as well. Because up until just the last few months, all of my experience had been on boats at the club, which are all in slips. They all have fin keels or shoal keels. They don't have swing keels. So, um, you know, transitioning from boats that are fixed keels in a slip that are always there, and all you do is hop on the boat from the dock, uh, is a very, very different experience to having a trailerable sailboat and being a trailer sailor. Completely different, like radically different. And I have learned that. All of the prep and everything you go through is a very different process. So maybe we can get into that a little bit. But in terms of buying a boat, that was a huge challenge. And it has various phases. And the first phase was just determining what I really wanted. And I went through this period of trying to figure out, do I want a trailer sailor, or do I want a larger boat that I might keep on the coast? So I was in my mind, I was thinking, well, should I get a larger boat and keep it in a slip, like somewhere in Myrtle Beach or Charleston or Savannah or whatever, and commute to the boat, which would be at least like a 5 to 6 hour drive to get to the boat, or another option was getting a larger boat and keeping it on the lake, but I was really hoping to have something that would allow me to explore more territory than just my local lake. So I went through all that kind of um, thought process, and it was not clear cut initially, and each had its pros and cons. But what it came down to eventually for me was I wanted the freedom of being able to get out to various different bodies of water, and I had a pretty restricted budget. And I was also finding inspiration from other sailors and YouTube channels where people had their own smaller boats. So it's kind of interesting that, like, as I went through the ASA training, I was getting on bigger and bigger boats, and the training sort of prepares you to skipper larger and larger boats. And where I ended up going after all my training was coming back to smaller and smaller boats.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of really prefer now having a smaller trailerable sailboat. Has been an absolute blast. I totally love it. And I think that that's definitely the direction that I'm going to be focused on for some time to come.
Yeah, I totally I totally hear you on the processes that you went through. What about why did you decide Com-Pac, and what other smaller boats were you considering in addition to the one you ended up with in the Picnic Cat?
I was looking at, well, once I narrowed it to, I did want a trailer sailor, and I wanted a boat that was roughly between 14 and 22 feet, let's say. I had certain criteria. So my criteria were, in terms of like a function of the boat, not budget and all that. We can talk about that uh, if you'd like. But in terms of just like what I needed out of the boat, is I needed something that I could step the mast myself, because I knew that I was going to be doing a lot of solo sailing, and I needed to be able to completely get the boat set up by myself. Stepping the mast was certainly the biggest challenge. So I needed something that would allow me to do that. Some other criteria that I had were that I wanted something that, where when I did bring people with me, like my wife particularly and my dog, I wanted for them to be comfortable. And so trying to find something that allows them to get in and out of the boat easily is sort of a challenge. It's sailboats in general are not very ergonomic. Like, just getting through the companionway on many sailboats, is tough. It's this very steep drop straight down. You've got practically a ladder you're going down, hardly even steps in some cases, getting down into the cabin. And I thought, trying to get a dog in and out of there is going to be tough. And my wife wanted to be comfortable being able to do that too. So I started looking for boats that were going to make it easy for me to get them on board with me. And then that started narrowing it too. First of all, stepping the mast, I realized, like, the smaller the boat, the better in that case. And of course, Com-Pac has, especially with their cat boats, the mast ender system that allows stepping the mast is very easy to do, particularly on the smaller cat boats. So that ticked that box. And then in terms of like the Picnic Cat, where I eventually landed, was the Picnic Cat just has a large open cockpit. There's not even a cabin you have to go in and out of. So in terms of like getting my wife and my dog on board, having them be able to just, like, step off the dock onto the boat, in and out, would be a very easy proposition. So it met those criteria. And then the last major criteria that I wanted was, I wanted an adventure boat. I want something that I can beach, something where I can get on and off sandbars and just beach the boat essentially. So having something with a swing keel or a centerboard that I can lift and get on and off land easy was also one of my criteria. So as I kept looking and looking and looking and looking at lots of Craigslist ads and talking to lots of sellers and even looking at a lot of boats, as that field narrowed And as I was gathering more information, it started settling more and more on the Com-Pac cat boat situation. And then once I discovered picnic cats, I thought, wow, that just might be the perfect boat for what I'm looking to do. And so I looked at several of them before I found the one that I bought.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit and I'll help you if I can, if you need it, because I think I know, but I just wanted listeners to have an idea of when we're talking about the picnic cat. So some of the specs on the boat, so like her length, her beam. So for example, the length overall, what I want to say, is it 14? Is that right?
That's correct. It's 14 feet. It's the smallest cat boat that Com-Pac makes or made.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's 14 feet. It's got a beam of 6.5 feet, and it's got a centerboard that when the centerboard is up, the boat drafts like 6 inches, so super
Uh-huh.
shallow. And with the centerboard down, it's a little over 3 feet.
Your boat's beam is wider than my 16-foot Legacy. My Legacy is 6 foot.
Oh
But
wow. Okay.
yeah, so for listeners, the whole, from my understanding, concept of the cat boat, like they're obviously Compact's designs are based on traditional, were, I guess, design or based on traditional cat boat designs where the beam is generally half of the length. Um, so I mean, typically speaking, that's how my understanding was that traditional cat boats were made. So like a 20-foot cat boat would have a 10-foot beam. Compact's cat boats aren't quite as beamy as that, but one of the other things too is, the wider beam provides, so like for example with your boat and my boat, I have a shoal draft keel and a centerboard, and the cat boats that are the next step up from your boat, size wise, lengthwise, in other words, I believe like the Sunday Cat, uh, those boats also will have the shoal draft keel, but your boat doesn't have that.
Correct.
And so people will say, well, is the boat really tender because it doesn't have ballast like how, the larger models do. But that's where that wider beam comes into play
Right.
because that's historically with catboats, the ballast that they had was not fixed ballast anyway. It was movable ballast, the bricks of lead just in the bilge that were shifted around, and depending upon how much fish were caught and where they were stored is kind of how everything was situated in the bilge of the boat to help maintain some stability.
Mhm.
So I'm curious because one of the things that sort of made me apprehensive, I guess is the word I would use, about getting the picnic hat, because I was like ready to buy one in Wisconsin. I had it, and it was a good deal, beautiful, um, like a dark green hull with a tan bark sail. Oh my gosh, it was gorgeous. The person had taken good care of the boat, but I started getting worried about not having fixed ballast. And even though I know that the beam was wider and that provides stability, I still felt, oh my gosh, is this boat going to capsize on me? Because I will tell you, I am not an athletic sailor. Like, I'm not the person who's going to hop on board a laser or a sunfish or, and capsize the boat and pull it back up, multiple times. I'm not at that. When I was a teenager, yeah, but but now, but the picnic cats aren't like that. They're not from what I understand. And I reached out with this question on the Compact Yacht Owners Forum, which I'll include a link to that as well, and got some really great feedback from a member. His name is Bruce, who's been a Compact picnic cat owner for many moons. And I said, I'm worried about this. Like, what are the chances of this? And like, what does this happen, or what do people think about this whole, there's no fixed ballast in these boats? Well, he came to tell me that it is pretty rare that it happens. And I think he shared, I think I might have sent you that document too, that I think he belongs to a Yahoo group that's about picnic cats. And I think there was some sort of accumulation of data where people were chiming in on their experiences. And there were a few people that did have capsizes, but when it was sort of all when all that was sifted through and examined, it really became obvious that in those specific situations when the boat went over, it was because of operator error. It's like you're not letting your sail out fast enough, or there's some explanation. And that document, I believe, is actually it's a PDF file that's available on the forum. You just have to find the right thread for it. And I can see if I can try to dig that up and put a link to that too in the podcast show notes for people to take a look at that. But for you, I mean, because I've been watching your YouTube channel and, you're not sailing that boat on a flat, calm lake. You were sailing with some action, I'd say. So, in
Mhm.
your experience, how do you feel with the times that you sailed her so far? Like, how do you feel she handles, and how do you like what is your sort of approach and mindset about keeping her stable? And do you have worries about capsizes with that boat at all?
Those are great questions. And so I've had a chance to sail her about a half dozen times now, particularly in Apalachicola Bay, near St. George Island in the panhandle of Florida. And she sailed excellently. I was so pleased. I am so pleased with how well she sails. And as you said, she's beamy because she's a catboat, which adds to the stability. Um, when I was taking my training, with the sailing club and all, their smallest boat is a 22. So I really had no concept of clue what it was going to be like to be on a 14-foot sailboat. So given that, it was a little bit more tender than I expected. I think simply because it is so small a boat. But once you have lowered the centerboard, uh, she's very stable. And so, yeah, as you mentioned on my YouTube channel, there are there are some videos that I've got up where I'm in the bay, the wind is really piping up, I'm heading
Yeah.
upwind against waves and current, and it's very hard to capture waves on video. They all kind of flatten out, so it doesn't look that bad on video. But being there in person, this was, I was in some turbulent water, and I am, there are videos where I'm banging into the waves, just like motor sailing into the wind, and she is extremely stable. Like I have no worries per se. I have, generally speaking, I have no worries that she's going to capsize.
Were you sailing reefed? I can't remember.
No.
Were you sailing with the reefed main?
No, no, I was not sailing reefed.
Okay.
So
And what?
full main, yeah.
Okay. And do you have just one set of reef points on her, or do you actually have
Yeah.
two?
She has one set of reef points on this sail that I've got right now.
Yeah. The other thing I remember asking about, with the if with a possibility of a capsize, the thing that I was told too that owners of picnic hats will often do is outfit their boats with, I think they're just called flotation bags, maybe. And they'll use, because from my understanding, when I was researching the boat, it seems that there's ample storage under those cockpit benches, right? Like there's a lot of
Yes.
storage under there.
Massive
And
storage, yes, indeed.
yeah, so you could, if you wanted to, uh, which, like I said, some people have done, and I believe there are some threads also on the forum. Like that's why I just love this compact. Yeah, I know I talk about it like almost every podcast because it really is, it's been around. I think I've seen posts from like back to 2004 or maybe even earlier. It's been around forever. So there's so much information. But I do
Yeah,
believe there is, go ahead.
there's Yeah, so in terms of a capsize, and I read through that documentation that you sent me, and there was somebody who said that they had capsized once, but it was, like you said, due to operator error. And I kind of, well, I didn't experience a capsize, but once I got out there and I was in the bay and I was, in some decent wind and stuff, I figured out uh, how that could happen. So if, for example, I don't know, let's say you were doing a jibe or something like that, and you had like heavy wind that just hit the sail, and you had your main sheet locked, um, and you had the wind really take your sail like hard. If you're not in
Yeah.
control of your main sheet, where you can release it really quickly, then I can see that
Mhm.
it could pull you. It could pull you over pretty hard. I don't know, like to what extent, like how heavy that wind would need to be in order to fully capsize you, but you would definitely feel the boat listing pretty hard, I can imagine. So
Yeah.
you're gonna heel over and may even capsize. Well, I think indeed that was the situation in which that particular skipper did capsize. Is he was doing
Mhm.
something on the boat. He didn't have the main sheet in his hand. It was locked off, and he went to go do something, and and the wind took him, or maybe he was imbalanced in the boat or what have you, and then it took him over. Well, I do believe in that particular story there was some heavy wind that took him when he had locked his main sheet off. So I was very conscious of that as I was kind of testing out the picnic cat. So I was whenever I was like going through the wind, tacking, jibing, or moving around the boat, being conscious of where is the boom, like do I need to be in control of the main sheet right now or not? If I am, like I'm having my hand on it constantly and being very controlled through my tacks and my jibes, particularly jibes. But being very very careful through that experience. But if you're on like a beam reach, a broad reach, like that kind of thing, you can definitely let go of the main sheet and
Yeah.
lock it off, be on your point of sail, go about doing other things in the boat. You're totally safe. Like I felt totally safe in the boat. I never for a moment really
Yeah.
felt like I was going to ever capsize. And there's even a video I have where I face some heavy turbulence with an inlet. So there's this inlet known
Oh,
as
yeah.
Government Cut near St. George Island, where the water, well, at the time of day that I was there, I was sort of evaluating it. I was doing like a reconnaissance mission to figure out like how would I get through this inlet in this little boat. And sure enough, the water got really turbulent and like from every which direction. It was like being in a bathtub, and I was really getting bounced around
Oh,
a lot.
yeah.
And so I started up the motor and I kind of motored my way out of that situation. But even in that, where the boat's like just bouncing around all over the place, I never really felt like I was going to capsize.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something. Couple questions. So the boat is gaff rigged. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, single and it is just a cat boat, so single mainsail, no head sail. How are you missing having a head sail?
Yeah, that's an excellent question because all of my training was on sloops. So, and even, when you get to that 102, like advanced sail trim, they spend a lot of time training you on how to control the jib, the headsail to get really fine points of sail trim. So yeah, when I went to the cat boat, um, it was a lot easier to transition than I thought it would be. And just having the one sail, to the one sheet essentially to work with, was very natural and easy. And it is kind of a dream because I've just got there's more to think about than that. You have an out haul, you can adjust that, you can adjust the halyards. You've got two halyards to deal with on the mainsail, so that's a little bit different. So there are things to pay attention to, but for the most part, you've just got the one sheet, and it makes everything really super easy. Uh, and so that gives me the opportunity and freedom to really enjoy my sail. I can be in the boat experiencing, checking things out and looking around and enjoying my experience without worrying so much about, trimming another sail. Um,
Yeah.
but then the flip side of that was I was actually more concerned, I think, about speed. Like, was this going to be a very pokey, slow boat? And
Right.
was I going to be able to control it with as much trim as I wanted, or was I going to be very limited in my capability to get, the boat up to speed or on a particular type of trim that I wanted? And I found that I didn't really have to be concerned about that. The boat moves plenty fast. She's very responsive. She can get on any point of sail that I want her to be on. She
Yeah.
performs nearly as good, in my experience, as the smaller sloops that I've been on. So I was very pleasantly surprised, and particularly on like a beam reach. Well, all points of sail are pretty good, but on like a beam reach or running, she is fabulous. It's interesting
Um,
because I just got back from St. George, and I'm back in Atlanta again. And actually, Bluebell's in the shop. She's getting some repairs, and I went back to my sailing club and I reserved, one of the Capris again, the Capri 22, back to where I was back to using the Headsail, and I thought, oh boy, okay, I'm going back from a catboat back to a sloop. And what's that experience going to be like? Is it going to be a lot of hard work to like? And yeah, it is extra work, but I found the
yeah.
transition from one to the other back and forth is really not that bad. It's pretty. It's just a different beast, It's like just like being in a different vehicle or something. So
Yeah, and I think each has its own sort of things to appreciate, right? Like
yeah,
I think it's kind of like you, in a way, I think you are sort of comparing apples to oranges with the
yeah,
two because I mean, they're both sailing vessels, but I mean, I don't know. And the same would be true for like, if you look at like multi-hulled boats too, right? With a catamaran and a trimaran, and there's all sorts of variations of sailing vessels, and I think each. I don't want to say that one is better than the other, though I'm sure there's probably plenty of sailors who would disagree with me wholeheartedly on that. I just think that each is going to appeal to different people for different reasons based upon maybe what they want to do with the boat or where they want to go with the boat. Then there's like fiberglass hulls or aluminum hulls or steel hulls, wooden, there's all sorts of. That's what's so great about sailing is that there's so many options for people. And I just sort of think it's a lifelong sport that we can enjoy as a result of how much variation there is available to us
yeah,
in sailing vessels. So
yeah. One other point on the catboat performance is that I recently watched a video on YouTube of a gentleman who did the race to Alaska, and he did it solo in a catboat, and I believe it was a Marshall 18, and he set two new records, uh, like speed records for I think it was for a solo participant under 20 feet or something like that. He set two
wow.
records. One of them was the
Yeah.
speed record, like how quickly he was able to complete the race. He's a writer. He's a journalist for Sail magazine. But
Yeah.
anyway, there's a whole video on YouTube where you can watch his entire experience of the sailing the 750 nautical miles from Washington to Alaska, and he did it in
Yeah.
a catboat, and I was so stunned by that. I was like, oh my gosh, he not only did he do the race in a catboat, he broke two previous speed records in a
Wow. Yeah.
in a catboat. So
Yeah.
these boats are very capable, and far it far exceeded my expectations. I am so happy with this boat.
Well, I can just hear it in your voice. You can see it in the videos. I'm so excited about your YouTube channel. I think I love how you present your videos. I know you told me what the software is that you use to do that so people can actually, as you're sailing, The camera setup is excellent. So kudos to you for how you decided to do all of that so that the viewer has a good view of you at the helm, plus the boat and what you're doing. And then, of course, the instruments that you can see as you're sailing. Like, I can't remember all the different ones, but you have maybe the direction the wind's coming from. There's all sorts of different instruments that you have that are in, it's real time at the time with where you were at that moment sailing, which is really, it's really, I don't know, I've never seen a YouTube channel like that. So I really feel like the way that you present all this is very unique, and I think it sets your channel apart from some of the others that I've seen for sure, because of how you present what it is that you're doing, and how people can really get a good feel for what it would feel like to be doing what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that feedback because I'm sort of new to this whole YouTube experience in terms of like, really having a channel and trying to find a niche for how I might present what I'm doing because there's so many good sailing channels. And it was like, okay, how do I, well, kind of what is my YouTube personality, if you will, or, how do I fit in here? And I'm still finding that out. I'm very early in that process, so I'm sure I'll make adjustments along the way. But yeah, one of the things I wanted to make, well, for one thing, is whenever I sail, I always like to capture a lot of data. So I've always got a GPS unit with me. I usually use my Garmin InReach Mini. I have the Mini too. And so I'm able to capture my my track, and I'm able to capture compass direction, speed, distance, all of that stuff. And so for as much data as I can capture on that device, I then match it up with the video so that at any point in the video you know exactly where I am, where my course is, how far I've gone, how fast I'm going, and I like to present that to the viewers.
Yeah, like I said, I've never seen that in all the years I've been watching sailing YouTube videos. I've never seen anybody present it that way. And so again, it just to me seems like a very unique, not only unique just from how you presenting it, but I think it's also your channel is unique also because let's face it, most of the channels that are out there are like huge cruising sailboats, right? Like giant catamarans that people are sailing, or in some monohulls as well. And it's hard, like for me, especially and for you, I'm sure, I think we talked about this as well. Uh, you know, before I decided to get my legacy, I looked at all kinds of boats. I mean, anyway, my problem was I couldn't find any information on the legacy, and this is going back 5, 6 years ago. I couldn't find any information on the boat except for what the Com-Pac website had, which was just a page, a PDF file, a web page, in other words, and a PDF file with, just some basics information. So they're really, I mean, and again, at that point in time, of course, I at least had the benefit of being able to reach out and get help to questions with talking to one of the owners, Jerry Hutchins, who was wonderful with customer service. But it's not like a Catalina 22 where there's a gazillion videos about Catalina 22s,
Right.
and there's just not really a lot of data about these sort of niche boats, if you will. And so I think people are, like I said, to use the word, I use this word a lot, hungry for this information. So that's really why I started my sailing channel, was because I thought, I couldn't find anything about this boat. So there's got to be other people that are in, pardon the pun, the same boat as me, trying to find information about this boat. And is this the boat that's going to be right for them? How is it rigged? What does it sail like? What kind of horsepower do you use for an engine on it?
Right.
What does it feel like to sit in the cabin? What's it like on deck? How easy is it to hoist the sails? How easy is it to step the mat? I mean, there's all these things, right?
Right.
but there was nothing out there. Interestingly, when I started my channel, it just so happened that there was another guy in, I don't know where he is, the person who wanted was anonymous except for his YouTube channel, his handle, in other words. He also bought a 2021 Legacy at the same time that I did, but we hadn't connected at the time at first. But he started his channel and I started my channel. He was a solo sailor, I was shorthand sailing. But between the two of us, I kind of felt like we had a great sort of library of info for people to learn something about these boats, just it's I think really helpful to people. And that's what you're doing with your channel, I can see too, because there's not a lot of stuff about picnic cats out there either. So I really applaud your willingness to share. I think it's really cool that you're doing that.
Well, thank you. And yeah, when I was shopping for the, for boats and I was looking at picnic cats and I scoured YouTube for picnic cat videos and I only found maybe 5 or 6 short videos ranging anywhere from like a few seconds to I think the longest one I saw was like about maybe 5 minutes or 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like that. So there were two videos in particular where I could kind of sort of get a sense of the boat because I saw people in the boat, and then when they went on attack, that they would switch sides or whatever. So it was like, okay, I can kind of get a sense of the size and how people are moving inside the cockpit. So yeah, one of my goals with the channel will be really demonstrating all various facets of this boat and what she's capable of and all the adventures that I'm going to be taking with this particular boat.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, I think it's fantastic that you're doing this, and I'm really excited to follow along with your journey. And I do have a couple more questions, but I want to be really respectful of your time. So,
Yes, I'm good
do
on
you have
time.
time for just maybe just a couple more?
Yep, sure.
Okay, so one will be really fast and the other one might be a little more involved. But the first question is I wanted just to sort of give listeners an idea of how you, when you go for a sail, if you have gear, how you sort of balance your gear on the boat. Like because there, like I said, I know there's a lot of storage underneath the cockpit benches, and it is a smaller boat. So as smaller boat owners, like both of us are, we have to be maybe a little bit more so conscientious about where we're storing, like the cooler full of soda pop, or the anchor, or so to keep things sort of balanced. That would be one question. And then the last question is just basically, I want to hear about some of the adventures, because I know there's one and specifically that you have in mind that you plan to do with Bluebell. So those are my last two questions.
Okay. In terms of balance, like you said, there's a lot of storage underneath the cockpit benches. So there are two lockers. There's one on either side, and those open up, and the space below runs the entire length of the boat. So you've got almost that entire 14 feet to put things. The challenge is you don't want to push things too far forward, because if you're reaching down through that locker, you need to be able to reach it. What I've done is I found these really nifty little stackable trays, or I don't know what to call them really, but they're like these these bins. So they're stackable bins that are about maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches tall and maybe a foot wide and a couple feet long, and they fit perfectly down there. So I can put about, I don't know, 4 to 6 of these little bins on either side of the boat. So I got like 4 or 5 on one side, and again 4 or 5 on the other side, and then I just sort of arrange them in a way that I can reach everything, and then I just put things down in those bins. It makes it's good because then you don't have things like rolling around all around down in there. Each, there's a sort of a spot, place to place everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds, yeah, I was kind of curious about that, how that worked, but that sounds like a really good strategy that you've got with that.
And then in terms of weight, Um, I haven't really had to worry too much about that. The boat is pretty well balanced, so my positioning of items in storage is more about just like mental organization, like knowing that, oh, this thing's on the starboard side of the boat and this other thing's on the port side of the boat. So it's been more sort of that sort of logistical organization versus like, oh, I need to put this heavy thing over here and I got to put this other heavy thing over there. I really haven't had to worry too much about that. The area in which I have had to worry about that is as I'm sailing, because she is a small boat, when I am positioning my body on the boat, I really want to be on the high side of the boat. In a larger boat, you can be on either side, but I think a boat of this size, you really want to be sitting, for the most part, especially if you begin to heel over a bit, you want to be sitting on the high side of the boat. But beyond that, I've really not had any like particular problems with positioning heavy items. It seems to otherwise balance quite well.
Okay, that's great. So, how about upcoming adventures? I know we've talked about one that you have in mind. Would you share a little bit about what that particular adventure is? And I can't remember when it is, but sometime this year, I think, right?
That's correct. So 2025 for me was a huge year, epic year for me in terms of my sailing training. It's where I did most of my certifications, and I did that offshore coastal passage. Um, so it was mostly largely about training and building up skills and experience through all of the ASA programs and such. And this year, I really want to make it more about my own experiences and developing my skills as a skipper and a boat owner. So it's a shift in mindset in that regard. And to that end, there are these events that I'm very, very interested in, particularly rallies, coastal rallies for small trailerable boats. And there are several of these events that happen throughout the year. Two of the biggest ones that I've learned about are the Texas 200 and the Florida 120. There's another one called the Everglades Challenge. So what these are multi-day adventure expedition style rallies where there will be a flotilla of boats that leave a particular starting point, and over the course of several days the goal is to, at the end of each day, meet up at a certain checkpoint, and then the next day you do it, you do it again. So you're going anywhere between, I'd say, like 20 to 40 nautical miles a day along a certain course, and then trying to just complete the entire adventure. The one in particular that I'm going to be doing is the Florida 120. So this is going to be near the Pensacola area, Pensacola Bay, and Perdido Bay. And right now there are, I think on the website there are about 35-ish boats that are currently signed up to do this. There's some
Wow.
videos, yeah, you can find videos online of previous years. This has been going on now for about 10 or 15 years, I think. And this will be my first time ever participating in anything like this. So the idea is to trailer my boat to down near Pensacola and kind of get in the water and sort of familiar with the areas and then participate in the event. So we go 120 nautical miles, and this particular rally is a round trip. So you go sort of one way over a couple of days, and then you turn around and come back. And it's not exactly like, there and back. It's like you can take slightly different routes to get back to your starting point, but it's 120 nautical miles. So what this is going to require for me is like building up my endurance to be able to sail all day long, camp out overnight on shore, because I don't have a cabin on my boat, so I'm going to have to camp on shore, and being able to navigate the channels, the traffic, getting around barges and big ships and things, and staying with other boats, staying in communication, managing food intake and sleeping situations and all of that. So it's quite an exciting adventure, and I'm just thrilled to be getting prepared for this.
So that I just like have total goosebumps listening to you talk about that. That sounds absolutely amazing, like so much fun. And so many different skill sets that are going to be coming to the table to participate in something like that, right? For sure.
Yes,
When is that event again scheduled for? I'm sorry, I think you might have said, but I can't recall.
it is in May, so it
It's
takes
in May.
place.
Oh,
The official start day is the Thursday after Mother's Day in May.
oh, wow. So I have a request. Maybe you might not want to do this, but I mean, I'm sure you'll be making some videos to share on your YouTube channel, but I know that some people on the forum often will share like a journal. They'll create a thread, and they'll just kind of journal every day of the day's events, which it's really fun to follow along. A couple guys that were on the forum, they just got back from one guy trailered from Ohio with his Suncat, another guy trailered from North Carolina with his Com-Pac 19. They met up down, I don't know if it was Miami or somewhere, wherever you meet up to splash their boats because they sailed to the Keys.
Wow.
So they were going to spend, I think, like a couple weeks exploring, sailing around down there. And I think after about a week, one of the gentlemen who owns the Suncat developed a rigging, well, a problem with his mast, so they had to cut the trip short, unfortunately. But up until that, well, even after that happened, the one gentleman with the 19, his handle is Crazy Carl on the forum. He journaled not every day, but every other day, maybe he would sort of write about some of the sites and what the wind conditions were like and the sailing was like. And, it was just really, especially in the dead of winter for me, it was really,
Mm.
really cool to be able to sort of follow along on their journey. You learn things along the way too from people as they do this. So I hope that at least at a bare minimum, maybe you'll do some, like, make a playlist for all of your sailing that you do within that Florida 120 for people to see what it's like. And now you're doing it solo, or will you have a crew with you to help on that Florida 120?
I will be solo, so that will be a challenge. So yeah, I'm completely responsible. I've got to be completely self-sufficient, and
Yeah.
I've got to have the endurance to be able to sail all day, and then
Yeah.
beach the boat, and then set up camp, get a good night's rest, and then do it again in the morning.
Well, I have a proposal. If you are willing, after you do this, it would be great to have you back on the show and talk about your experience doing it. The
Yeah,
prepping
yeah, sure. I would love
while,
to.
yeah, like what it was like to do it, and then what were the lessons learned afterwards to recap, because that is, the first time. It's like Paul Trammell, he's this other podcaster that has a wonderful sailing podcast called Offshore Sailing and Cruising, and he's an author and has written several nonfiction sailing books, of which the first one is called Becoming a Sailor. It's how he started his own sailing journey, and he decided to document all of this in the book and on YouTube because it's the first time you ever do it. You're never going to have another first time again, right? So it's all the more special to document it, and then you'll have that not only for yourself to go back to, but other people can, go to that as a source of information. And yeah, yeah, that would be incredible if you would be willing to come back after you do that, because I know I'll have a lot of questions and want to hear all about that journey, because it will be amazing. Before we close, I just want to give you another opportunity to sort of, if there's something that we didn't cover that you really wanted to talk about or bring up, and also give you a chance to let our listeners know if they want to follow your journey. Like, let's talk about that YouTube channel, how they can find you, or any other socials that you want to share, or any other, last bits of information that you'd like to share.
Okay, sure. So to address your earlier question, yes, I will be documenting my experience with the Florida 120. YouTube is going to be the primary platform for that. So I'm going to be shooting videos about my preparation for the event as I get closer to it, and all the things that go into preparing for something like this. And then I will be filming my experience during the event. And then once I get back, editing it all into a playlist, like you mentioned, of the various days and experiences that I had during the event. And then I also just wanted to mention, in terms of like what prompted me to do this, or what inspired me, I should say, is there are other channels that people have done these kinds of things, like the Texas 200 and the Florida 120. So on YouTube, there are lots of videos of people doing these events. A few of the channels that stand out to me is there's Restro Thunder Road. He's done the Texas 200 several times over the last 5 years. I think every single year he's participated. There's a guy named Ziggy Lavengood who's on a Wind Rider 17. He's done the Texas 200 several times. And then sort of in the small boat category, not so much the rallies, but just in terms of dinghy cruising or cruising on a very small sailboat. Roger Barnes, I believe, is his name. You and I had talked about him before, from the UK. He's all about adventuring on small boats. And I found all of those to be inspiring to me in terms of being willing to embark on an adventure like this that I'm about to do.
Very good. Yes. I have to look him up again. I do remember, I think you mentioned him to me, but I have yet to explore his channel. I did come across Ziggy's channel, and I actually have been in touch with Brandon from the Restro Thunder, and I'm trying to get him on the show to not only talk Texas 200, but just trailer sailing, since again, that's going to be my new goal for this sailing season upcoming here. So yeah, hopefully I can get him on the show too, and I'll let him know that you were inspired by him too. So
Oh,
that's
sure.
really great.
And the last thing I think I would say
Yeah,
about that is the one of the beautiful things about like all of this is the community and getting to know other sailors who might be doing this. So in addition to, of course, all the, the prep and the tactics and techniques and things I'm going to need to learn to know how to do, or that I will develop in the event, is like meeting all the other people who are doing the event. I'm just thinking and dreaming and imagining what it's going to be like when I get to camp each night and I get to talk to all the other sailors about what their day was like.
yeah,
And meeting people and establishing connections and friendships and relationships with people, the opportunity to learn and connect with others is tremendous. And also the ability to support
absolutely.
each other. So, like you mentioned that you're interested in doing the Texas 200. Boy, if we all did it together one year in the same year, and we were there to support
That
each
would be,
other and stay in radio
oh,
contact and buddy boat and look out for each other, that would be such an incredible thrill.
I think that's sort of why I feel that I could do it, is because of the fact that there are other people that are there along with you for it. You know what I mean? I don't know that I'm ready, as much as I have always aspired to be the woman who's sailing around the world solo in a, I have a lot of different dream boats, but anyway, one is a Toshiba 31. But anyway, is that realistic to do that? I don't want to say never, never say never, but there are other, I guess I hate to use the word realistic, because I never want to ever stamp out a dream, and never say never. But I do think the possibility and the likelihood and the ability for me to be able to do something like the Texas 200 versus sailing around the world solo is probably more within my reach. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that I would have, like you said, a community of other sailors that are participating in this event along with me, people
Mhm.
who are going through the same things that I'm going through or have gone through the same things as a first timer in the past when they were a first timer doing the event. That's what I'm trying to say. I just love everything that you're saying about this community aspect because I just think that that to me is what I don't know. It's not it's certainly one of the biggest reasons why I love to do what I'm doing is because it's just I don't know, it's just fun to learn from other people and be inspired by them because when I'm inspired, that gets me off my tuchus, to do it, start doing it myself.
Right.
Stop sitting in the chair and the armchair sailing and just get out there and like Paul Trammell would say, chase your dreams, it's really important and we can all help each other do that.
Absolutely, for sure.
Well, it has been so wonderful to have you here on the show with me. I can't express enough gratitude to you, Skipper D, for coming on to the show.
Yeah, thank you. And I didn't mention my channel, but it's Skipper D Adventures.
Yeah, Skipper D Adventures. I love that. And congratulations too. I want to say that again on your new boat because she really is just a super duper cutie pie picnic cat for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love her. Thank you so much, Darren, for all of your time and your story is, I think, so inspiring. I'm just really so happy that I was able to have you come onto the show and share your experiences. So thank you so much.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a great night.
If you are enjoying my podcasts, please consider following and or subscribing to my show. Your support truly means the world to me, as well as inspires me to keep bringing you stories from others out there with a passion for getting out on the water. Until next time, fair winds.